Hi everyone, it's Rich here, and I feel slightly outnumbered today because instead of Rich and Rob, I'm joined by Rich and Rob and Rob. So me and Rob have decided that next week we need to find someone called Rich. So if you're heavily involved in sport, finance, and your name's Rich, then pop me a mail and we'll see what we can do. But we're delighted to have Rob Couhig with us today, all the way from the US of A. Recently taken over as Reading owner after similar stint at Wickham. Rob, lovely to have you with us.
Delighted to be with you guys.
I mean, I think the process of buying Reading started in September 2024, Rob, and eventually was concluded not too long ago. I mean, if you were buying a house, you probably would have pulled out of that house sale, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I was going to say, not to correct you on your very first question, but it actually started in April of 2024 when we began to lend the club money conditioned upon our ability to purchase the club. And over this course of the summer, we lent them close to $6 million or pounds and had all along been led to believe that we would complete the transaction in September. In September, they withdrew from the transaction and hilarity ensued. No, we then got involved in some litigation and were able to finally complete the deal in May. And to your analogy of a house, shame on me if I would hang on that long for a house.
You're in the US at the moment, Rob. What does your summer look like? How busy has it been from your perspective since you took over?
Well, I bought the club on the 14th, and on the 17th or 18th, we started a 2 week long jury trial. That's my day job. And we had agreed to try the case when we didn't know when this would come to a conclusion. And what most people don't realize is we settled and completed within a matter of days almost. So I started a trial in a small country parish up here. Big case though. We took 2 weeks uh, living out of the hotel. We finished. We won. We then moved on. We went immediately to Reading. We spent a week there getting things ready. Came back here. Spent another week. Went back over, and we just came back home on Saturday of this week.
And it, Rob, would you just mind just sitting back slightly just so we can
Yeah. I'm finding
see
myself staring at
you in
myself,
full?
and that's because I only see out of this left eye, and so I'm constantly canting around. Now I have to look directly at Rob Wilson. So
Oh,
I'll
that's
hand.
all right. It's
Well,
enough.
it's not the best view I've had all day. Let's
There's
go.
worse sights. There's worse sights,
Ju-
especially in Sheffield.
yeah, Rob. Just can I just take you back to
Yeah.
that process actually? Because you talked about litigation. One of the things that I always find fascinating in the acquisition of any sport property is people don't typically understand the steps you need to go through, and that scenario you just played through, the lending of the money that was contingent on you purchasing, presumably, that then looked really shaky, that ended up in litigation, and then you were essentially executed. Can you just talk us through the sort of general steps? So, you know, what was it that was interesting about Reading? Um, why why did you persevere with Reading, notwithstanding the loan that you put in, and what was it that really got you over the line with them from a I guess from a business proposition, but also that personal investment that you're making, emotionally as well as financially.
Well, let me do this, and with your permission, I'll go back 6 months, 8 months before that.
Sure.
I really loved owning the Wickham team. I thought we had done some tremendous things in terms of upgrading it on the pitch. As you may know, first time in 135 years it went to the championship. Five of the single best years it's had in its history up until this year were during our ownership of 5 years. We were able to turn around the economics of the club such that it was operating at a sustainable level. We were able to put in the infrastructure improvements that I thought were necessary: scoreboards, new sideline boards, create a new television and radio product that began to generate net cash flow for the first time of substantial measure, change around the fan experience, all of those things, which is what really drives me. You know, my history in sport is I used to own a AAA baseball team that was always in America, one of the top five, while we owned it in terms of attendance, on field performance, and the like. So I like building the organizations. I thought that we would stick with Wickham forever, or certainly when we got rid of it, we would not be in it. I had a little illness that I guess somewhat expected at my age. You know, I had a little heart issue, a little prostate issue, and some other things. And so I met a guy that I really liked, Mikhail Litmanov, and he and I struck up a relationship, and he offered to buy the club from me. And he said, "Hey, but I'd like for you to stay as chairman." I thought that I would do that and it'd be kind of a fun ride. Um, and then in the meantime, a couple of things happened. He bought me out. My health got improved tremendously. And I realized I wasn't going to be very good as simply sort of an employee, face of the franchise sort of guy, or club, excuse me. We don't use the word franchise. Um, but so yeah, there was a knock on the door, and some guys came to me and said, "Look, this Reading club is in trouble. Would you be interested?" And I had seen Reading 6 months before when we had gone down to look at the training ground about possibly acquiring it for Wickham. I liked what I saw. I liked the history. You know, it's got incredible infrastructure to it. It's got a 25,000 seat stadium. It's got the training ground is actually way over capacity for what you need, but it was still beautiful. It had a fan base that historically did well, and so the brain began to work. And I said, well, maybe this would be the right one for us to come back in. In the meantime, as I say, my health was restored. Um, my law practice is going great, but the guys down there are doing well without me. In some ways, they do better without me than when I'm there. So I looked at it, and then it intrigued me as to how we would put it together, which comes to Rob, your basic question, which is how do you do something like this? And we began to look at the valuations, and the valuations were all over the place, as is true in all English football. You guys know this because you operate in the economic sector. Ordinarily, you come in and you buy a business and you do it on a multiple of what? Earnings? Well, first you would have to have earnings, right? Yeah. Otherwise, your values are zero. Or you do it on a multiple of revenue, but the revenue number was a little bit uneasy. So really what you do is you get into the old-fashioned bargaining of how about this? No, how about that? Uh, and there were some external forces at play. The owner had decided that, having put in close to 200 million pounds, that day had come and gone of him supporting the club for a variety of reasons. So we struck a price. Part of the price was we would lend them this money while we did our due diligence, or attempted to do due diligence and the like. And then things kind of got off the rails for a variety of reasons that I still don't quite understand. So then we get to September. They sent us our money back, but that they had not, we had not released the liens we had, nor would we, because of our perception of some wrongdoing. So then during the interim, from there until the following May, they tried to sell the club apparently to a couple of people. It's a tough club to sell because there are all these vagaries around it. Plus Couhig's hanging around. What's the deal with him? So ultimately it came back in our lap. And I don't know if that was good or bad. We'll find that out 2 years from now.
It's a fascinating process, though, isn't it? And all those external pressures that are on it, and actually the kind of, in my world at least, the general interest that we're starting to see with private investors into English football, whether they're from the US or whether they're private equity or another version of a fund. But fascinated there that the points you were making on how you value. So I do a lot of work with a couple of colleagues on how you might value a professional football club, and you have to go way beyond multiples. You've got to get in the weeds, haven't you? So, what does the club own? What does it owe? What's the value of the infrastructure, the playing squad, and so on? All these different things. But ultimately, what you're saying is there is a negotiation between two people. This is what I'm prepared to pay. This is what I want, and eventually you get to a position where presumably you're both just about comfortable with the price you pay, and then you can move it.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, it's a fairly, in the traditional sense, it's not a safe investment in that if you spend £10 on it, what do you really expect? Anything else, you're expecting what, £2 minimum a year out of it. And in this case, most people get into English football and say, well, I'm going to put this money in. I'm probably never going to get my money out until I sell it. We operate differently. We start day one. How are we going to make a return on our investment and yet do it in a fan-friendly manner? So that's the part that's enjoyable for me. To your point, the negotiation, though, English football is this far away from being a truly valuable sport. You say, well, what do you mean by that? It's already valuable. Well, it is and it's not. What we pay for an English football club in League One or League Two is relatively small compared to what you would pay for minor league baseball in America. Certainly, it is in a different category from Major League Baseball or basketball or the NFL. So it's a place where you can come in. There's an enticement that says, hey, as a business guy and as a sports guy, because everybody's got an interest in the sport, I think I can do better than you can by applying my brain power. And the thing that holds it back, believe it or not, there's this impression that if I come in and I have more money than you, I should be able to buy my way up. If you look at the Wrexham or you look at what was the team the year before that went up to the Premier League, Ipswich, where they brought in a great deal of money and they threw it on the table. And it's not a tale of Cinderella making it. It's a tale of one day you're not Goliath and the next day you are because you're swinging all this money around. I have long advocated that the best approach for English football, that the folks who run it should be advocating for but refuse to because of its history of it's the old mill owner who took care of the town by putting his money in. All clubs in every league should have the same amount of money to spend on their first team. All of these issues with Bury and now Sheffield Wednesday or Reading before me would go away if everybody in the league, and then it would really be a test of, is Couhig smarter than Wilson? Because he's putting his extra money into building the academy or finding this out or finding that out. But they're terrified that, oh my gosh, that's not how we do it. So they are leaving, in my estimation, literally hundreds of millions of pounds of valuation sitting there rather than grabbing the bull by the horns and saying, this is how we will do it. Instead, we have the SAMP deal, which is kind of nibbling around the edges, but it's never going to stop the cataclysms that you see. Enough of me pontificating.
I found myself nodding a lot. Rich is probably going to tell me off because you're now speaking language that I genuinely love and understand, and it's something I've been saying in our academic circles for a long time. You need to protect those, they call them salary cap, budget caps, whatever, to improve the competitive integrity and competition and balance within the division, which will then grow the size of the valuation of the organisation and will then grow everything else around it. But it's too American for us Brits and Europeans to hear, because we are so wedded to this wonderful concept of promotion relegation and the rich benefactor coming in and smashing all records on transfer valuations and whatever else it might be. And then we just play around the edge a little bit and we say, no, you've got salary cost management protocol, you've got a profit and sustainability regulation.
I actually suggested to people, there's a simple cure. Every league and every team in the league can spend twice what it receives from the league in solidarity payments and media payments. Bang. It would be right at the median, incidentally, of what we spend in League One right now. Every team would have the same amount, and we would go at it. And I'm telling you, the next day, every team in the league would be twice the value it presently is. The problem is, and we ran into this in minor league baseball 25 years ago, the league is divided up into those people who buy it because it's their local club and they want to protect it. Those people who are adventuresome, I'll say, and want to spend their own money proving how smart they are. And then there are those who are reasonably good business guys. And the league, I don't think, has come to terms with it, and it just staggers me. The other thing, if you remember this, and there's no reason why you would, but immediately after COVID, both League One and League Two came out with some pretty solid. They made the mistake. They characterized them as player salary caps. Yeah. And really, it's not a salary cap. It is a cost allocation. And so the reason I want to tie it to something like payments from the league and media is that then everybody who's a participant has an active interest in how do we get that money up. Suddenly, instead of going to the Premier League begging, oh my gosh, would you guys please give us a pittance, the old Dickens deal, we would come in and say, hey fellas, we're players here, we want this, and all of our players would be supporting us. The Players Association would be supporting us. When I want to spread my message to America on our television, instead of spending what I think is a true pittance and pushing what's done through the EFL and bringing the EFL to America, everybody would say, hey, let's go spend some real money so we can bring in some real money so we can take that salary allocation from 4.2 million pounds a year to 12, and it wouldn't hurt the average fan. And by the way, if you do that, Reading's still going to be putting real money into its academy, in fact, more. But by the way, the value of the thing has gone up 3 times. But the real anathema, and you know this, and I'm sorry, Rich, we get into this, and you may not realize this. This is what I love about all of this stuff. But if you do that, there are people who never want to. I don't think the guys in the league want to talk about, in the league, I mean by the superstructure of it, want to talk about valuations. They don't see their job as raising the value of the clubs individually. They don't see it as raising the value of the league. What they see is protecting the schedule, because that's what they are, a scheduling organization. I'm sorry, enough. Man, you guys got me early in the morning, and I haven't even had a cup of coffee, and I'm already off into things I probably shouldn't be talking about.
Well, thank goodness we didn't phone you at 4 p.m., Rob. God knows what would have happened. That's right. But I was going to say, Reading is in many ways the absolute epitome of what English football is all about. The club is 153 years old. It is an absolutely essential part of that community. And what you're suggesting there, to me, is safeguarding the future of that asset for years and years to come.
Absolutely. And Rich, think about it this way. A club like Reading literally was on the doorstep of going out of business, despite the fact that it's in one of the most affluent areas in the country, despite the fact that it is surrounded by the highest technological companies in the UK, despite the fact that all the fan support never went away. But it gets back into what Rob was talking about. It is the local, who's the rich guy we're going to take the money from to keep our toy going? And, it's just wild. It really is. But I enjoy it for some sick reason.
But before we came on, Rob, you alluded to some innovations that you were party to planning to introduce at Reading. Would you be able to talk us through a few of those?
Yeah. Some of them are still in the early stages, but we intend to change our radio TV package to make it much more attractive, much more viable. We'll be bringing in a head of communications whose job will be to build it as a separate business unit. That's for my friend Rob here. And it will stand alone and contribute mightily to our club. And we'll do it through more of, and you guys will understand this better than most of your listeners, by building your own channel that produces content. Remember what English football and all sport really is in this day and age. It is a content producing machine. And we live in an age in which content is king. And so we will be monetizing that as best we can. We will be looking at doing some things with the stadium and the training grounds that's never been done. Most of the time, these things sit there unused, except for the 4 hours a day, 5 times a week in the case of the training ground, or 2 times a week in the case of the stadium. We're going to look at how we can magnify that use while maintaining the purity of it for the club. We're looking at redoing our. We have a contract with Fantastics right now that I don't think is serving them or us very well. In the United States, it's hard to buy merchandise for Reading, and that's ridiculous, because going back to where we started this program, we believe we can be a worldwide name and sell worldwide. And Rob, this goes back into valuations. If I'm selling overseas kits, and I sell 20,000 kits a year overseas that I'm not presently selling, when you come down and you've been hired to value the club, the first thing I point out to you is, by the way, we just started selling overseas and I've got 20,000 of them. And your client is saying, well, shoot, if Couhig can do that, I can sell 100,000 of them. And so we changed the valuations. We're bringing AI to the forefront. Again, this has a lot to do with where we're located geographically and the businesses around us. We're excited by ultimately being known as the club that has brought AI to the forefront in enhancing the fan experience, the ability of our manager and coaches to bring the best out of the players. From our business standpoint, every aspect of this club will be inculcated with the best uses and practices of AI. There may be other clubs that are doing that, but I don't know of anybody else who's putting it on the front foot as much as we are. And in the limited time we've been there and we've made these statements, it's been very positive, the reaction we've received from the business community, particularly in Reading. It says, holds up their hand and say, hey, boss, by the way, do you know where the AI community is centered in England? 3 miles from your stadium. So there's lots of things like that are going on. Yeah, I think the best answer I can give you, Rich, is check with me in 4 months and let me talk about what we've done, not what we're going to do. I think if I make a mistake sometimes in my enthusiasm, I sometimes get ahead of my ability to perform in the instant. I talked about we were getting ready to sign some player, and at the last moment he decided not to go. He went to Europe instead. And if you notice, there are no leaks from our organization. Nobody's going around saying, hey, I've heard this or that, because anybody who leaks gets fired. Pretty black and white deal for us. Yeah, and we had to do it because of the way the club was operated before. It was basically a sieve. So
yeah.
I don't know, Rich, if that answers your questions or not, but
well, it sounds like a lot of people involved in the club went through an awful lot. It's not just the players that were impacted, is it? It's the backroom staff, it's morale, it's I've read somewhere that there were times when people didn't know whether they were going to get paid at the end of the month, which is
they went through it, and we feel a great deal of sympathy for them because they went through it for 9 months like that, or 12. But they're good people, and they've done a great job of keeping the club going.
Yeah, and on the pitch, you've got to take your hat off to the Reading players because they, performed absolutely phenomenally given the circumstances last season.
Well, yeah, the players did, and they will be, they were paid, and they will be justly rewarded with their new contracts and the like. And the manager, remember, Noel took over from what everybody thought was the next superstar manager. In fact, he just got hired at Sheffield United. But Noel had not been a manager, but he has performed magnificently, I think, with all of these conditions and stresses. And so we're excited for the future with him.
What if you said Reading FC to your American audience? What would the response be at the moment, Rob? Would it be
I kid sometimes, and somebody was sort of semi-threatening me with, Rob, if you don't do X, Y, or Z, it'll look badly on them. And I said, I live in the central part of Louisiana, and I would be hard pressed to find 4 people within 100 miles of me who have ever heard of Reading FC. So my job is to make it not Wrexham, because that's a story that's been told, not even Sunderland, because that's a unique story, but to make Reading a ubiquitous term within the United States for English football, and to have it be known for what we constantly tell people: we want to be known for honesty, transparency, and financial sustainability. And the added thing is, wow, they really did figure out this AI stuff first.
Be game changer now, wouldn't it? The AI stuff, if it really takes hold. And I'm thinking back to some of the investment work we do. We look at digital footprints, and
Yes.
you're right about Reading. It'll have a very, very small, if any, digital footprint in different territories outside of the UK. But if you can move the needle just 1 or 2%, and that then has an impact on the amount of content you're able to stream and who you're able to stream it to, the amount of shirts and merchandise you can sell to, and all of a sudden you start to get that multiplying effect, don't you, of the brand, coupled with, as you've just said, that level of transparency and financial sustainability. And it's a really powerful story.
It is, and I think that's it. And the thing that I enjoy is creating the story and then fulfilling the story. And then, when we turn around, whether it's 3 years from now or 10, and say, look, and I've had to learn this, English football is a journey, and we're only going to be there for a short time in the history of the club. If I stay there 10 years, I will still have been there less than a 16th of the time that the clubs existed. And when you put that into context, it tells you, hey, look, all we can do is make sure when we leave, it's better than when we arrive. And I'm touting my own horn a little bit. That's what we've done everywhere we've gone, whether it's in football, baseball, our law practices that we've created, the bookstore that we have. Everything that we do, our guiding post is not what's the P&L look like tomorrow or today, but when we leave, will people say, hey, this is better because they were there?
And I know a lot of people at Wickham very well, Rob, and everyone sings your praises there. I mean, when you took over at Wickham, there weren't that many American owners in US football. There certainly weren't that many US owners in the Football League. What was it about Wickham Wanderers that attracted you in the original instance?
True story. We lent my brother Kevin, who's sort of my business hero and football fan, Liverpool supporter and occasional season ticket holder. He and I were arguing one day about English football, and I had never watched a game. And he said, you could not do what you did in baseball in football. I said, of course I can. Here, hold my beer. And so we went looking, and my nephew Pete and I found Yeovil. And we lent them some money, and Pete got down and into the weeds with them, and we thought we might buy them, but it did not come to pass. But they paid us back our money. And by now we had met a broker who began to show us some clubs. And I had written to Portsmouth, and they told me that they had decided to go with Michael Eisner. And I congratulated them because I said, that's real wealth, and that's what you need. We wrote to Plymouth, and they had just gotten my friend Simon Hallett on board, a couple of others. And I thought I was finished looking, and I had told my wife I was coming home, and I told the broker I was done. And he said, please go see one more club. I said, unless it's on the way to the airport, I'm not. He says, well, as it turns out, it is. And I went to see Wickham, and I loved it. I thought it was small enough and in bad enough shape that we could help it turn its life around. We got in, and as you know, it's a truly family-oriented club, which suited us. And Pete came over, Missy came over, and Pete stayed. Pete Couhig, my nephew, who did a tremendous job building the football club, building the relationship with the fans, really was knowledgeable about players and managers and the like. And we had a great time. And as I say, we would have stayed there, I suspect, and still been there, but for this little hiccup I had with my health, which, God works in mysterious ways. It's turned out to be good for, I think, for Reading. Mikhail and his group have done a phenomenal job, had them in the playoffs last year. For Reading, hopefully it turns out to be a similar success.
How long did it take for you, Rob, to feel at home at Wickham and feel that you were part of the English football? I don't know if you want to be part of the English football establishment, but part of the English football family.
Two different questions. We felt at home at Wickham almost from the day we arrived. Now, remember, they were in a little bit necessitous circumstances themselves, but the board of the trust, which owned the club when we came, could not have been nicer. The fans could not have been nicer. We're pretty outgoing people, Pete and Missy and me, and so we made a lot of friends, and I don't think there was ever a feeling of, we're not part of the group. They made us, and Gaz, of course, Gareth Ainsworth, and his group did a remarkable job of making us feel at home. I don't know that I feel I'm part of the English football establishment yet. Not that anybody's been mean or anything. I belong to a couple of different groups. One, a group of American owners now that, to your point, we started off with just 4 or 5 of us when COVID hit and is now up to 12 or 14. I belong to another group of League One owners who are trying to figure out how we can best get some discipline into the ranks on how we spend our money. And so I feel good about it, but I have never felt comfortable, and it's probably because my positions are not the same as everybody else's. I'm a fan of Rick Perry and Trevor and Nick and all those guys at the EFL, but I was never a big believer in the, oh my gosh, we'll do anything to get a little bit more money from the Premier League. I always thought that if you wanted to combat them, you ought to be much more like the old AFL did against the NFL and just lay your market down and say, we're going after you. But that's not the English system. So, and look, we're very cognizant of being guests in your home. So I never talk about the politics over there. I never talk about anything outside of the league or, the like, because it's not my place. When I'm gone, y'all will still be there and still have your league and the clubs and the like, and I'm aware of that. I happen to think that there are some things that we could do that would make it better, but I'm not going to try and force my will on people. So, long, convoluted answer to say I feel welcome, but I will never be part of the in-group.
And how will you feel when Wickham play Reading? Well, that'd be a massive day, won't it?
It'd be a massive day, but I'm going to fully expect Reading to win.
How much time will you spend over, and how difficult is it to as a club owner when you're not living in the country full time?
Fortunately, because we can now do so much by Zoom or things like this, it's not quite as hard. But over this first 6 months, I fully expect I'll spend 3 to 4 months in the UK, just because our systems are so different than they're used to. We have to break some bad habits or even good habits just to make them our habits. And that takes you can't get away from in-person, day-to-day combat. And I mean combat in its best sense of looking each other in the eye and listening and the like. And no matter how comfortable we get with the phone or Zooms, it's still not as comfortable as having a cup of coffee as you walk around the corner and you run into a guy and you say, "Hey, I've been thinking about this." And he says, "Well, Rob, let me tell you why that doesn't work." People are much more free, I think, in their thought association if it's an informal bumping into sort of thing. And that's important. That's why. And look, the other part is there's such a relationship between fans and owner and club that I think it's important for us to be there a lot.
Um, well, it's good. Rob has vanished, but the good news is,
No,
Rob, you're still called Rob, so we're still Rich and Rob, so no one can get us under the trades descriptions.
well, good.
Actually, but
Well,
I won't just. There's been a lot of discussion about the Premier League talked about Game 39 and playing matches in the US, and the increasing number of US owners in across the football pyramid means that talk has never gone away. What would your view be on teams playing league matches in Louisiana, for example? You welcoming Reading?
I think it'd be great. Remember, we send the NFL to London every year. We
Yep.
send them to Germany. Uh, we have a global presentation, and we're not taking advantage of it. We've been now look the whole schism between the Premier League, top 8, top 10, and the rest of the league. Somebody's going to have to deal with that sooner or later. And I have my own way that I would deal with it, but it's not for discussion today. But having, Man United come over here and playing Chelsea, I mean, God, you could fill up 3 stadiums.
Yeah. What have you made of the Club World Cup, Rob? What kind of impact has that had over there?
I'll be candid. I've paid no attention to it whatsoever.
That's fair enough. Um, yeah, it's been an interesting experiment. Let's see whether it's continued. But I think
I will say that I think soccer is a fundamentally attractive match. It's good for TV. It's good to be there. But it's like anything else. Baseball, I think, runs the risk of overstaying its welcome every year by the time you get to late August and you've been playing since April. And the only thing that keeps soccer going is in the late parts of the season is the promotion relegation battles. Um, you have to be careful that you keep people wanting and waiting for the new season rather than they'll finish this up, this month, and we open camp today or tomorrow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And also, I mean, you have to look after the players. I mean, they're your primary asset, aren't they? If you're flogging them, a lot of these players have been playing almost round the clock since the end of COVID. It's asking an awful lot, and people might say, "Oh, they earn all this money." Well, it's a relatively short career, and it's going to be even shorter if they're flogged to death.
Yeah, I agree with you. And of course, I take the position, I think it's more pragmatic. I would love to see everything truncated and back into more reasonable seasons. If I was czar of all of soccer, I probably would say, you guys don't play in the best months of the year in England for
Yeah,
some strange reason, but we insist on getting out there at the end of January and freezing to death. But there you go.
well, I'm a cricket man, Rob. So whatever you when you get that job, I wouldn't put anything past you. When you are named the czar of football, we might have to have a little chat about that together. But Rob, thanks very much for coming on. It's been great to speak to you, and wish you all the very best at Reading,
Thank you.
as I'm sure everyone does. And yeah, we'll be watching what unfolds with a lot of interest.
Thank you so much. Enjoyed it, and hope to talk to you in person soon.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Rob.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye. Nelson.